very lucky because I just live there, like 4 minutes walk. Where is Hung? I see him. Welcome to Amsterdam.
Great to meet you, man.
We stay out again. We arrive, this is happening. We dance, shut your eyes, and then we get to break this.
Hey everybody, I'm Hung Lee. I'm the editor of Recruiting Brain Food, and I'm delighted to be here in Amsterdam, actually one of my home countries. So pleased to be here and looking forward to my conversation with Ali in just a minute.
Live up the night and dance till it's light. Just let it go tonight. Just let it go.
There is a dinner I'm co-hosting later tonight in Soho House, and we've
Okay.
gathered together some thought leaders and some operators in the TA space. And we're going to have a great meal, great conversation, great networking, shared learning. That's the future for how we're gonna roll forward here.
Okay, and is it something you're doing a lot?
I am. I think I'm a big believer in community, man. I think that we are in an era where artificial intelligence is obviously dominating how we kind of consume information, produce information, and so on. I think we need to corroborate and complement that with community intelligence, collective intelligence. Like we need to meet in person and exchange that peer-to-peer lived experience, lived learning. That's the necessary counterpoint to artificial intelligence.
What do you like the most in these community events?
I think it is the democratization of it, in the sense that there's no hierarchy once everyone is together and having a beer or having a glass of champagne. The hierarchies disappear, and everyone can just have that peer-to-peer kind of dialogue, which I think is so rich and so important.
Okay, and what do you miss the most in those community events?
Miss? Well, I'm doing them, so I don't think I miss a lot. I guess back in the day, I'd probably pile into the booze as well and have a longer evening, let's say.
Yeah.
But these days, I'm alcohol free, so yeah, my evenings kind of cut short around 10:30, 11 o'clock. I gotta go.
Okay, and where are these all community events specifically for the recruitment audience is moving? Because it is changing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, everyone kind of had this COVID bounce back where we had a thirst for getting together. That thirst, I think, has been supercharged now with artificial intelligence. And I think it's a positive development. Basically, my theory is we are getting much more information input, much more information output, but we're desperate for that connection still with other human beings, which AI cannot replicate. And so this type of dialogue, these types of meetings, anything I can do to support those, I'm going to try and do.
Are you doing it worldwide?
Actually, I am. Part of the reason why I travel a lot is because there's so many local communities of recruiters out there that just need to connect and stitch together a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And some vague idea I had was, okay, if I can land in a place and maybe I can just do a quick meetup or something, there's 5 people there, 10 people, doesn't matter the number, they'll all walk away with enriched connections with the local people that they're part of, and they're going to do meetups, they're going to do events themselves on their own. So yeah, I do try and just fire start a few things because I'm kind of privileged with the community I have, that I do have lots of people in different places that may not know each other. But me being there might give them an excuse to connect and get to know each other better.
That's amazing. And do you see that the recruitment people, be it the juniors, be it the seniors, they all exposed to all these communities everywhere?
Oh no, I think that most of us are pretty isolated, pretty siloed. And that's not a condemnation. I think that's pretty normal in any function, in any business. Typically what happens is you get 0.1% that are involved in communities. They go to webinars, they go to conferences. 99.9% just get on with their job. I think that's okay. But I do think we're missing out because those connections, I think, will really give your professional sort of career a significant boost. And your personal life will improve as well. So I don't see any negatives towards having more connections in person with people in industry.
What would be the piece of advice for someone right now who is actually isolated, but they want to take the first step, they want to be part of something bigger than that?
Yeah, there's 2 steps actually. Number 1, avail yourself to the big list of recruitment and HR events to attend in 2026. That is a crowdsourced spreadsheet that I just threw up there a couple of years ago. Everybody who has an event will stick an event on there. Just go and check it out and go to one in your hometown. The second thing you should do is basically connect with other people. You don't wait for an event to happen. You might know 2 or 3 people. That is enough to get together for a beer or a coffee and just shoot the shit. So yeah, take action. Don't wait for other people to provide that situation. Be the person that is the first caller and say, hey, what do you think? We should just connect. Do you fancy a beer? Do you fancy a lunch?
What's the story of Amsterdam for you?
Oh, people might not know this, but I actually was born in the Netherlands.
You were born in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I'm still technically Dutch. I have a Dutch passport, bro.
Wow. This is new.
Yeah, but I left the Netherlands when I was a small boy, so I don't speak Dutch. But the Netherlands has always had a pull for me simply because of my history and my birth here. My grandfather moved here in the 1960s, and my mother grew up here. So basically, I've always had a very soft spot for the people in the country and also the country at large.
Wow. Okay. Is there any story with this place?
Oh, with Amsterdam itself, or with the Rijksmuseum?
Yeah.
I've only visited it once, and it's one of those amazing places that you want to just spend more time in.
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased that we're having this conversation here. 'Cause it gives me an excuse to check out some Rembrandts later or whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall we walk?
Yep.
And is this the first time you're actually checking this garden? I don't think so.
It is. I think so. I mean, I've basically walked through the grounds, but I haven't actually spent time in this place. And yeah, I can see immediately why it's a very popular spot.
That's my favorite.
Is this your favorite part of Amsterdam, Ali?
Yeah, because I live just 4 minutes away from here, walking.
Oh, perfect.
So every Sunday I'm just taking one of the books and just sitting there
Oh
and
my God,
reading.
that would be amazing.
I only have 1 hour for that, that's it.
So you give yourself 1 hour to do non-digital reading. You book out.
Everything super conservative.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Traditional.
I love it. Sometimes we do a lot of distracted reading now, and there's no depth to what it is. Sometimes you need to sit with a sentence and just really kind of chew it over on what it means for you. So I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, it's a habit I'm trying to develop as well. First thing I do in the morning is I read a chapter of a book before anything, before switching computer, before doing anything on. It's like, okay, you have a book, let's read a chapter and let's figure it out. Just to settle your mind a little bit and think a little bit differently.
Is there any book which changed your, maybe not life, but it has a special place in your life?
Oh yeah, there's about 10. I mean, there's certain books that, the way in which I kind of judge books is, do I want to reread it after I read it?
Okay.
You know, and there's certain books where you've read it to the end and you just want to read it back again because it was so impactful. And some of these are fiction books. They're just like brilliant work of art. And other ones are just really useful. Like they give you revelations that you can just employ immediately. So to give you an example of a fiction book that I read that was cover to cover and then cover to cover again, Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin.
Okay.
She's an amazing author. She was an anthropologist, and she wrote sort of science fiction, but what's today called soft science fiction. So she was less interested in the spaceships and all that type of stuff, much more interested in kind of human culture. But her canvas was using the landscape of science fiction to explore what would happen if. So Left Hand of Darkness was a story ultimately about what would happen if human beings could change gender throughout their life. And it was written, I think, in the 60s, very progressive, as you might imagine now. But when I read it, it was like, oh my god, I had no idea about how these things work. Fantastic novel, cover to cover again.
Okay.
Fantastic.
That would be the suggestion on the fictional book.
On the fictional book.
Okay.
So a suggestion on a non-fictional book, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, but this is a self-help book that is not scientific whatsoever, but I still have this copy. And it's called Conversationally Speaking by a guy called Alan Pease. And what this guy was all about was ultimately teaching people how to have better conversations. And we don't realize that actually having a conversation is a skill, and it's not something that we're ever taught to do. So I remember speaking to a friend of mine. All of us have got that one friend who's just an amazing person to spend time with. And that that type of person is able to have animated and rich conversations with any kind of sort of protagonist.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes they're having conversations with people that are difficult, awkward characters, but they're still having this massively engaged conversation. And ultimately, I remember a friend of mine, I approached a friend of mine and said, hey, Mike, how are you possibly having this brilliant conversation with this guy, who I personally know is really awkward, but you're just like sitting there, you're having an hour's worth of conversation with him, and everyone seems to be having a good time. And he said, listen, it's all about basically taking responsibility for the shared experience of the conversation.
Okay.
You know, when two people talk, both parties have equal contribution to the success or failure of that conversation.
I love it.
And you have to have that mental shift. Don't go in there and think, oh, this person's boring me. Or, you know, this guy's not asking any questions. It's your job to take responsibility for it. Anyway, that breadcrumbed me back to this book, Conversationally Speaking, which basically formalized all of the stuff that my friend Mike knew intuitively. And I just thought, okay, this is going to help me change my relationships. And it has. Some of my most important relationships today, I can put down to the value of that book.
Okay. Because you are in the conversations every day with dozens of people.
Right. I mean, it may well be that those lessons have kind of now externalized into other things, but I kind of adopted that mentality that you have got to be interested in what they've got to say in order to be interesting.
Amazing.
You know?
And I think this is exactly the thing, Han. And I'm very curious about the book now. Thanks for the suggestion. I'm going to read it myself, 100%, because I don't know. People tend to believe that the communication skills or the conversation skills are given and everybody have it. But this is exactly the skill you need to master. You need to nurture it to become an interesting person, but also to become, sometimes, as you said, it can be a quite weird character, but you're still somehow making it happen.
Yeah, and once
Cool.
you're able to do that, you have better relationships, you get better information. Those relationships will stand you in good stead down the road, no matter what sort of career path or life path you decide to go down.
Han, everybody knows you in the recruitment industry, but also outside now. You're becoming a superstar. But my question is a bit different. Who was Han before that?
Oh,
Before all this recruitment, brain food, all these community events. Yeah.
You know what? I'm the same dude, man. And I do think that's true. Mainly because I don't quite take what I'm doing seriously, you know?
Okay.
I mean, most of my friends, I wouldn't say real friends, because I've made loads of friends within industry and through doing brain food that are absolutely real friends. But the friends that kind of I knew before I started this journey, you know, they can't take what I'm doing seriously either. And it's really, and they don't often understand what the heck I do. And it's just really nice to sometimes hang out with those guys. Because for them, it's just like, okay, what is going on? Like, how are you even making a business out of this?
I found a really good place for us to sit.
Yeah, so, I mean, that keeps me grounded. I mean, I don't think that what I'm doing right now is particularly special. It's not talented. It's in many respects fortuitous. And it's kind of as a result of where I am within the community. But yeah, it's not through any special individual quality that I possess and others don't, you know. It's like, okay, I'm very lucky to find myself in this position, and I'm going to keep going as long as people seem to want me to do these things. And it's been a blessing. So yeah, I don't think I'm any different. People might be disappointed at that. There's no huge revelation as to who I am. What you see is basically what you get, and it's a guy just finding his way, you know. I aim to say I'm a doer because other people I think are much better at taking an idea and immediately start activating it and start the train going and stuff like this. These are the type of people, by the way, you want in your business because they're like massive activators. For me, I would say that's not a particular talent of mine. What I think I've learned is simply to externalize my thinking a lot more than most people, which means I don't wait until I've got a finished sort of solution before I'm talking about it.
or I don't wait until I have a completed objective before I'm like getting people together and let's explore this together. Ultimately, I'm a believer in kind of emergent properties rather than defined strategies. And I guess what this means is, firstly, I'm leaning into my strength. I'm a terrible planner, right? If I plan something, I map it out. This is exactly how it's going to work. Ali always falls apart, right? It always fails in a catastrophic way after having invested tons of time. So I've learned my lesson as to how my character is, and I'm much better just like finding my way through it by pushing into it early. And getting the information back and then pushing again. So that's basically how I've how I operate, and that I guess might manifest as being someone who does things, but I consider it more like just externalizing some thoughts earlier than most.
Okay. Before the recruitment brain food, but also before all this fame, you were also a founder yourself of the tech business.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more about it?
Workshape.io, RIP, I have to say. The story is quite funny. Basically, I was working as a head of talent for rapid growth startups. So I was the guy doing the 0 to 50 hiring after a founder just raised $5 million or something. I'd convert that basically into the core team. And I did that for a couple of startups here in London, and despite your best efforts, you end up becoming friends with some of these people you hired, these software nerds, software engineers. And I had a bunch of these friends. I still have them, as a matter of fact. And I remember they end up coming at you and say, "Hey, Hung, let's go do something." So I remember very clearly, actually, the guy who ended up being the co-founder and the builder of the product came to me and started complaining about, because I was his recruiter friend, of course. So I was responsible for all of his problems, right? So he came to me and said, "Hung, why do you guys always like ask me for jobs I don't want to do anymore? I don't want to do PHP. I'm a React developer now. Can you tell them all to stop calling me?" And I said, I remember saying, like, firstly, Gordon, I'm not responsible for like everyone who has your CV, like you put your CV out
partially.
there. I can't take responsibility for that. But secondly, we had a really good thought. It's like, okay, why is it that people always call him for work he doesn't want to do? Like, why is it that recruiters don't know that this guy doesn't want to do PHP anymore and wants to do React now? And the answer was pretty obvious. It's basically because the information recruiters had was all historical. They have a resume, they have a CV, they have GitHub repo, they have the stuff the guy's done in the past, but they have nothing about what the guy wants to do in the future. And a job, of course, is what the guy wants to do in the future. And we're always recruiting for what the guy's already done, right? And so we had this brainwave to say, what if we could collect information about what the person wants to do next and use that as the primary way to connect people to opportunities? And long story short, we thought, we reinvented reimagined, shall we say, a new way to describe work. We got away from text. Instead, we did time distribution over tasks. And we started asking the question to software engineers, okay, if you could shape your future job in terms of time distribution, what would that look like? Like, do you want to do a lot of QA or do you not? Do you want to do a lot of DevOps? Do you not? Do you want to do a lot of design work? Do you not? And we were able to just basically quantify the distribution of time. And of course, once we were able to quantify that, we could then chart it. We asked the employers on the other side the same thing. Like, if you're going to design the job without text, just time distribution over tasks, what does it look like? We would then blindly match people who basically were a good fit based on time distribution. And that was called Workshape. Brilliant idea, don't you think? Idea was brilliant, and it is brilliant. However, I was the CEO of the company, so I was always going to crash that car because I was not capable of running that type of business from what I knew then. And ultimately that business failed, principally because we actually did well first year. We got a little bit fooled by early revenue, and we assumed we could just keep rolling without raising. Total mistake, because we were building a marketplace and we needed tons of marketing to acquire candidates and clients. But yeah, I mean, it basically breadcrumbs to what I'm doing now. So my attempts to save a business that was failing I was the CEO, of course, so my job was to keep more sales solves all problems, right? So I thought, okay, how do I stuff the top of the funnel with as many leads as possible? And I thought, okay, I got to find a new way to communicate with the audience I'm selling to. Let's do a webinar, let's do a newsletter, let's do community type stuff. And Recruiting Brain Food was born from that.
So that was actually the inception of the
Yeah.
things you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, okay, how do I have a non-intrusive way to just communicate, just to touch the audience that I wanted to speak to? Because when I wanted to go in and start presenting the service, I wanted to do that with as many warm leads as possible. And I guess this is where the journey towards, as you say, Ali, fame, which is a word that still doesn't sit quite well with me, but I accept the description because that was actually a BD strategy. It was, okay, can I get well known enough as a face and as a name in the industry I was selling to, such that my open rate will go up a bit, such that people might give me the time of day. Because even back then it was very obvious that the cold approach was declining in terms of ROI. GDPR was around the corner there as well, so a lot of the stuff you're doing, okay, wasn't clear whether that was compliant. So there was a couple of drivers to say, okay, we have to do more relationship-driven sales now, and that involved pushing the face of the business forward rather than back as it was before.
Okay. What is the biggest challenge today?
Challenge today, depends on who you ask, Ali. Have you got an ICP, an identity of a person that
Sure. And I love it. And we're going to touch all of them now. But let's start with you.
Yep.
Even though you are well connected, well known, and you are a source of information by taking and giving, but still should be some kind of a challenges you're facing.
Yeah, totally. The challenge I've got, I think, is actually similar to everyone else's. How can I optimize my business operations? I'm running Brain Food as one guy. That was always the plan as well, by the way. I wanted to try and do a Tim Ferriss style. When sort of Recruiting Brain Food transitioned from as a BD tool for my product to becoming its own business, when that transitioned, I made a very early decision to say, okay, how much can you do as one guy? And so being optimal in all of those things is business efficiency has always been one of the drivers. But AI is hit in a way in which I can reinvent a lot of the things I'm doing in the back office, whilst making sure in the front office it's still pretty much like human heavy in everything I'm doing. So yeah, that is a challenge because I've got to basically handle a bandwidth issue. I'm time poor, so bandwidth is a massive problem. And I understand how adoption curve can be slow for a lot of people that don't have bandwidth, because I consider myself one of those people with low bandwidth and actually low maturity in terms of AI adoption.
Yeah.
Because I can't quite find the way to switch, and I don't have a spare weekend to do it. It's almost like that type of thing. So I've got to carve out the time to create this new way of working.
You said about the bandwidth, and that ideally you want to optimize, you want to embrace this AI native approach, but it's quite challenging. And when it comes to the recruitment leaders or just recruitment audience, they also want to actually implement a lot.
Yep.
What would be your piece of advice, how they should start, given all these challenges which we're talking about now?
Yeah, I think recruitment leaders actually have a critical role to play because they're the ones that essentially manage the distribution of work for their teams. And they can't expect their teams to actually become AI enabled if they don't create the space for that to happen. So they need to essentially say, okay, we need to hard block certain times in the week whereby we're going to use it not necessarily for immediate efficiency, immediate results, but actually to experiment with how to do things differently and better. Now, the early outcomes of that are likely not to do anything to the bottom line. In fact, they might be deleterious to the bottom line because you're doing a lot of experiments. Most of them are not going to work. You might look back on that and think, wow, what a waste of time. Not a waste of time, because it's all education for you to get to the point that the workflow or the solution that is going to work for you. But that takes, you got to give basically, you got to create the space for the team to experiment. And that's the job of, I think, that TA leaders and any heads of function have really got to embrace.
people know you, but then the question is, okay, how to collaborate with you in
Yeah.
a different ways? Like if somebody's a vendor, if somebody's a head of TA, if somebody's a company, what are the services you can provide? What are the supports you can actually give to everyone?
Yeah, I mean, so essentially recruiting Brain Food is turned into an accidental kind of media business. And all of the revenue comes from companies that are trying to address problems for the recruiting community. There's a number of ways we can work together. The first thing is, of course, they could sponsor a media channel I'm currently operating, whether it's a newsletter or a podcast or what have you. Other times it's a little bit more collaborative, like this event tonight, for instance, where we agreed, okay, let's do something a little bit different. Let's get a nice restaurant. Let's curate the audience. Let's get a small group of people together, heads of function in a room. And let's see whether we can create a sort of a peer-to-peer type exchange with heads of function. So everyone hopefully will leave the event with loads of value. But of course, from the vendor side, they've also got an opportunity to spend quality time with the key decision makers that they'd love to speak to.
Okay. And what is the best possible collaboration you want to have actually with the people out there?
Oh, I mean, from a community point of view, I think that any kind of connection is good. So I'm not one of these that would condemn anybody for, what they choose to, how much they choose to participate. Same goes on the vendor side. Like for instance, if a company wants to do something and they've got a plan.
Okay.
Like
That's a good change.
I don't want to be prescriptive and say, okay, this is the thing I want to do, because I want to be responsive to the requirements and the needs of that particular organization. They might have a plan, in which case I'm happy to support that plan. If they don't have a plan, then I'm happy to put something together which I think might work.
Han, you are digesting tons of information every day when it comes to the industry of recruitment. What is the thing you feel like, okay, everybody should know now, but for some reason they're not paying enough attention?
The one thing which I think is really important is we in the talent acquisition sort of function need to understand that the efficiency gains that we create need to go somewhere, and they don't automatically go back to us. So this is the idea that, okay, if you do kind of increase your productivity, if you do implement technology to get faster and better and so on, all of that is very good, but don't expect or assume that the hours that you've saved go back to you. They'll end up going back to the business. And the business might then respond by saying, okay, you can actually do more because you've now produced more time.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we in TA understand that there's a negotiation with the business about what happens with the time that we save. And we need to implement what I call a keep what you kill policy. I'll repeat that, keep what you kill, so that we're able to take the time that we've saved and reinvest it in the stuff that we think that the business needs from a talent perspective. So for instance, if I save 10 hours of time on the sourcing side, that those 10 hours don't just disappear back in the business somewhere. Those 10 hours need to be invested in increasing the candidate experience, or increasing the time we spend to diversify the pipeline. So I think we under account for this, and we currently just assume that being productive is enough. My argument is being productive isn't enough because there's a political sort of argument as to what happens with the time that we save.
Okay. And when it comes to the recruiters themselves, like the ones who are actually operating, the ones who are actually doing all these jobs every day, and they want to automate, they want to actually save some time, again, for sure they need to negotiate with the business what they will do with the time. But again, what is the steps, how they can do that? Because it feels a bit scary.
It does, and there is a scenario where basically recruiters that are still if you've been doing the job after a year, you've already developed workflows and processes that have worked for you. And it's very difficult to kind of re-engineer stuff that has worked for you in the past. And, roll the dice on something that should work better, but you don't know yet. And so the difficulty in kind of doing that sort of, it's called switching cost. Like, how do we reduce the switching cost for that individual? I think on an operational level, if you're working as an employee for in a TA function, you've got to get buy-in from the head of function and have that person help you create the space to experiment. If you're working as a solo player, which I find, by the way, gives you the freedom to experiment, and of all of the recruiters out there, the most advanced in terms of AI enablement are the ones that are flying solo, then they tend to just progress ahead without any kind of encumbrance of existing processes and existing sort of workflows, which we might describe as like a cultural debt. So understand, I guess, what kind of recruiter you are, how you fit in with an organization. Can you get the endorsement and backing from your head of function? Quite important that you get a yes on that, because if you get a no, then it's going to be a persistent problem for you to try to keep the innovation high. So yeah, some tough decisions might be made down the track, but it's one of the things I would consider if I was doing the operating role of recruiter today.
Okay. And when it comes to the companies itself, is this the head of TA's role or the recruiter's role to trigger this AI transformation? Or is it the role of CEO or somebody on the HR?
It's up for grabs. And it's also determined a great deal from the history of the organization and how all of the units fit together. But there is a significant opportunity for the people in the talent space. There's a significant opportunity for the people in the talent space to really embrace the AI automate, to kind of have a leadership function within AI enablement across the organization. A friend of mine 3 years ago, actually now 4 years ago, came out just speculatively with a fictional document, and she produced something she called a chief automation officer.
Oh, really?
She pushed it out there, and I read the spec of it, and you know what? I was looking at the bullet points, and I was thinking, you know what? The person who does this is probably someone in talent. Because it's not an engineer that does all of these things already.
Yeah.
Workflow design, job design, understanding which components to actually extract, which tasks to extract from a job, which tasks need to stay in the job, which are going to be done by humans, which are going to be done by a machine. Those are decisions that basically someone within the people function should be able to do. So I'm encouraged to see that this is starting to happen. So for instance, you saw Atlassian CHRO take on responsibility, I think, for automation and AI within the organization as well. You see, was it Novartis? I forget who it was, but there was a merger of HR and IT down the track for some of these big companies, again, with the proviso that in future, work is going to be performed by both human and machine. In which case, the new function is going to have to consider all of those as capacity, as basic capacity for the business. So yeah, I think a huge opportunity for HR, TA to expand scope to encompass this automation across the industry.
Rather than just one function.
Correct.
Okay, love it. And then it's not necessarily should be some kind of a separate person. It can be the same person from the HR organization.
I think so. I mean, the expansion of scope is something that the people ops function has to do. Simply because the likelihood is AI is going to reduce the absolute numbers of people per company. That's the idea behind AI, right? To get more efficient means taking out the headcount. That's a reality that we often kind of dance around a little bit. We don't want to talk about it, but hey, what is this $4 trillion opportunity that VCs talk about? That's payroll, So, okay, great. That's the direction of travel. I think this makes sense. But how can we, in their function, kind of evolve with that and help companies make this transition from a kind of a human-heavy organization to let's say, a human-dominant organization that's significantly supplemented by AI. I think we've got a critical role to play, but it's up to the individual leaders to basically embrace the challenge And not all of them are going to do that. Some will and some won't.
What would be the message for the recruitment teams who doesn't believe that something's going to happen with them in the coming years if they are not implementing or deploying some kind of a new transformation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to lecture anybody because everyone, I think, is equipped to make their local decisions more than me. I also don't think that anybody needs persuading that AI will have a transformatory impact in the work of recruitment simply because it's reshaping organizations. So we've had we're like the canaries in the coal mine in many respects because we're there to try and bring skills in and bring capacity in that the organization believes it needs. So we've got a very early view. I don't think we need to persuade TA that, hey, change is here, change is going to be dramatic. What I would say to people that aren't yet mobilized is that we've got to escalate this into the top priority. Even though you may have sort of real confidence in some of the traditional foundational strengths of talent acquisition or recruitment, the relationships, the human touch, the understanding of how a business works, the intuitive kind of knowledge of how a business works. All of those things I think are super important. But I don't think it's a zero sum to say this is important, therefore I ignore the potential for AI and automation. You've got to find a way to combine the both.
As we're talking about the recruitment, and the recruitment is about the people. And the function, as you said, it's bringing the right skills, bringing the right capabilities to the organization. But it reminds me the book of Ben Horowitz that, hey, it's all about first people, then the product, then the profit. So if the people are so important and the recruitment function is the function who is bringing you that people, what would be the message to the CEO of the companies? What they need to know and what they have to do with this function, which obviously should be very strategic.
Yeah, I would say the CEOs can often be blinded by the short-term efficiencies that you might see with an AI-only approach. It's very easy to look at some numbers and say, I'm paying this amount of payroll to do this function, and it seems if I pay far less people and just give them a couple of Claude licenses, then they can replicate that function. It's all good. I think that's a decision to be made more carefully, simply because there's two things here. Firstly, don't underestimate the institutional knowledge you're losing when you get rid of sort of large numbers of people at the same time.
Yeah.
AI is trained basically on explicit information, which means documented information. But we all know that the world as it is contains tons of information that is never documented, including within business. And we in recruitment will know that very well. You look at some of the key artifacts in our world, the job description, the CV, do either of those documents effectively or even accurately capture even half of what that job is or even half of what that person is? Everyone's going to say, of course not. So where is the other information about that job or that person? It's in the conversations, it's in the minds of the people. It's in the conversations, it's in the minds of the people. It's in the off-the-cuff dialogue that never gets recorded or transcribed. That knowledge, I would say, you've got to be very careful if you want to get rid of it, because you won't be able to recover that information ever again.
Exactly.
The second part to think about is there'll come a point where every business becomes optimally AI-enabled. And at what point, when that point is achieved, then how do you differentiate? Like, what is your competitive advantage if every recruiter can go at 100 miles an hour and immediately pipeline 100 candidates qualified within 2 seconds?
Exactly.
Okay, everyone can do this. So how do you differentiate? I think the only way you're going to differentiate is, again, with some of this undocumented institutional stuff, the cultural values, the vibe, the feeling you have when you walk into a business.
Yeah.
All of that stuff which is nebulous and difficult to document, difficult to describe, maybe impossible to quantify. All of those things are still very real, even though we can't quite capture it in words or numbers.
Yeah.
And again, the CEOs need to be very careful before you decide to kind of press delete on that stuff, because you don't get that back.
I love that perspective. Okay. Look, Han, let's say we are given the project with you now. In theory, we need to do the transformation in the company, and I will just give you the example. It's the mid-sized company, 250 people. Obviously, they are thinking about the AI transformation because otherwise they think that they will lose the market and everything. What would be the steps? What exactly we're going to do within the next 3 months or 6 months with you?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you got to do is recognize that this is not just a technology implementation idea. You can't just buy a tool and then assume that's the problem solved. You can't buy 10 tools and think that's the problem solved. Turns out, in order to get sort of that type of transformation, you got a classic change management challenge. So this is all about, okay, can you take the stakeholders with you? Can you get senior level endorsement? The people who are directly affected by the challenge or have the ones that are poised to benefit most, are they on board with the story that you're trying to sell? So classic change management, that's a lot of human to human relationship building, that's a lot of listening. When you say 3 months, I would say a big component of those early parts of time need to be spent doing non-technical stuff, classic change management. The second part, again, pretty conventional, but you've got to select like something that's going to give you a very quick result, sort of at high percentage. So it doesn't have to be something that is immediately transformative or, you know, dramatically change something, but you've got to basically take something that is going to give you the learning and also the internal impact to then go, okay, we need to, this is proven to work, it's demonstrable, everyone gains confidence from it, let's go to the next step. And the third step is, of course, how do you then broadcast this initial success and create sort of some sort of internal dynamic where all of the leadership figures within the organization and the influencer type figures within the organization become like competitive in order to succeed at the next sort of part of your transformation journey. So, you know, if you just zoom out on it and you delete the AI from all of the comms, it would just look like classic change management.
Nothing bigger than that. Okay, I love it. Han, now the time for, we have 2 things actually left. We have 1 game, and maybe it's going to be actually better if we're going to play it there, closer to the Rex Museum. But still, we are giving like a very practical advices to the recruiters, to the head of recruitment, and also anybody who is about to do some changes with the AI, because this is also a big topic. But then like super hands-on steps and etc.
Yep.
Yeah, shall we?
Okay, yeah.
Cool. Then let's start with I think the recruiters. So they're watching us. They're saying like, okay, Hank is there. What should I do?
What should you do? I mean, firstly, you're doing the right thing by paying attention to content like this because it's all enriching, right? The part of it is that you've got to plug in and understand what everyone else is doing. If you're struggling to do anything with AI, the real sort of trick is to actually engage with AI and have AI support you to do it. It's not the same as software in the sense that here's a tool you have to learn, and it's kind of an inert thing that you simply have to break through. AI will interact with you, and it's through the interaction that actually you're going to improve your capability. So you should be talking to AI every day. Let's say you're doing something in a personal level, a personal context. Find something in your personal context that you think you can improve, that you're taking. It's a heavy manual process that you can absolutely automate without any fear it's going to damage the overall sort of thing you're trying to achieve. That's a personal task. Go and solve that personal task with AI and force yourself to go through that process. And that's where these types of breakthroughs will emerge. It won't be through magical solutions, but for working with something at a almost trivial level and then getting a breakthrough there will then allow you to go forward into the next phase. So start small, start personal, and do it today.
Amazing. What would be the piece of advice for the leaders?
Yeah, this is where you've got to carve out time. We have to go back to this. Leaders, by the way, are no different from anybody else. They've also got to carve out the same micro wins, if you like, with regards to AI. Very important that leaders don't end up overly strategic at this moment, because they're in danger of being so far away from the coalface that they're no longer able to commentate authoritatively on big decisions on how everyone else needs to approach this. It reminds me a lot of my early days in recruitment, actually, where, I mean, I'm old enough to remember pre-internet, right? So where you're interacting with, I remember interacting with like heads of business owners, small SME business owners that were making policy as to who should use the internet or not in their company. They didn't even have a website or didn't even have an email address. And I was thinking, how can they make a decision on something they literally don't touch themselves? So this is one of the things that I think anybody in leadership tier it has a kind of a weakness, because part of leadership is to step away from the operation and to manage the people. And so your day-to-day interaction with the problem and the tools becomes a little bit more distant. You got to kind of dive back in and reconnect with the work. And really it's an educational piece for you. And then once you've done that, the second piece is really, okay, you've got to turn around and face the business and then negotiate for that time. You've got to defend your function, and you've got to speak to the C-level and say, look, we can get there, but what I need from you is this. And don't just say, okay, we're going to do it and with no negotiation. Because you've got to create the space for your team to experiment without fear of not getting immediate results.
Okay, love it. And now going maybe to the third persona, who's responsible for this automation, optimization. Again, you are aware of all the tools, all the solutions, all the automations, but sometimes it feels too much.
Yep.
And too many. What would be the logical steps, but also like the right approach in terms of transformation?
Yeah, I think you probably do need a specialist. I mean, even
A separate person.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have people in your function that still have operational responsibilities, it's very hard to persuade them to then add something else on which takes away from those operational responsibilities. So even within software engineering, a lot of the great examples of companies that have accelerated, they will tell you that they didn't get there until they actually put together a team that was focused on AI enablement. So I think that the future of TA, let's keep it within that framework, is that there will be figures within the TA function that are solely there to do basically talent ops or recruitment operations. They already exist pre-AI, but I think that this becomes a much bigger part of the future, because you're not going to get there with a bunch of recruiters that's still under pressure to deliver a headcount, right? You need someone that doesn't have a headcount target, whose only job is to figure out, okay, how can I help my other recruiters do this better?
AI enablement.
AI enablement, yeah.
That's it. That should be the role.
Yep. We already have a few of those folks. Could be automation specialist. It typically sits within recruitment operations for those companies that are big enough to support a recruitment ops function. But I would say for your 250-person business, let's say you have a 3-person recruitment team, at least one of those people should be rec ops doing this work.
Okay. But that RecOps is actually that step into the AI enablement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big opportunity for recruiters that like to experiment and like to be very close to the technology. Actually, I've found that a lot of the people who are very good at the sourcing side, the technical sources as they were, they've transitioned to this type of function very readily, either as sort of in-house sort of operators or as people that are kind of now setting up their own consultancy services for other companies and helping them do that enablement. I think it's definitely a growth part of the future for us.
Then do you see that it's not only about the vendors and the companies, but now we have that bridge consultancy. It can be internal capabilities, external capabilities. Who needs to actually do this deployment, transformation?
Well, I think with the latest kind of revelations with Fable 5 and the concept that AI from a vendor can be withdrawn or switched off at any time, the awareness that you need internal capacity has just increased. So there's a possible future where
Okay.
yeah, there's a possible future where all companies will end up rolling back sort of from the cloud, having on-premise AI, on-premise servers. You basically maintain and develop and train your own AI, and you simply just plug in headless software. And your responsibility is to provide the intelligence. The software is there to provide the interface and dashboard and all the rest. So I think there may be a future that looks like that, especially for companies that have a stringent sort of controls on compliance, like where is the data kept, how is it trained, and also for companies that want to not have dependency on unreliable vendors.
Okay. And then the role of those people who are actually responsible for creating that brain and basically replacing most of the vendors, that would be quite important. And those people would be more and more in need.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think vendor replacement is what's going to happen. I think there'll be an interaction between the internal setup you have and then with a vendor will still provide. But maybe you can decouple the AI from it. So for instance, let's say you have a Salesforce. Salesforce is going to roll in with a full stack and say, look, just use this, it's all good.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's another option where you say, actually, I don't need your AI, I've got my own. I just want the Salesforce front end. And I want that to interact with the stuff I've already got. In which case, you're going to need a technical resource to in-house to handle all of that. So, I mean, Ali, let me tell you this. I started doing my recruitment job back in the days when, this is pre-cloud, again, aging myself, but hiring server engineers, hiring database admin, network engineers, happy times. And I've got a soft spot for the return of the IT department.
This is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, rock, paper, scissors. That's the game.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
1-0.
Okay, after 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
That's it. I'm getting back.
3-1.
That's it.
3-1,
You won.
bro.
The hoodie is coming.
Well
hon.
done. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for sharing all the insights. And I hope you like it.